Hello, this is Math 0018, Section 4.6. So today we're going to be looking at an introduction to percents, and we're going to look at basically kind of four objectives rolled into two: writing percents as decimals and fractions, or writing decimals and fractions as percents. So first of all, you need to know that percent means parts of 100. It's always based on 100. So if you look at the figure below, there's 100 little squares there in that grid. And because we have shaded 13 of those, then we can say that 13% of that figure is shaded. And then make sure you recognize the percent sign. So first we're going to look at changing percents to decimals. So your first step is to get rid of the percent sign because you're changing it to a decimal, and then you're going to move the decimal point two places to the left. Okay, so the hard part is it's easy now, but on the test you have to remember which way to go. That's the part that makes it a little bit more difficult. And the reason it's always two places is because percent's based on 100, which is two zeros, so two places. And then as you're moving it two places to the left, if you run out of digits, you add zeros as you need to. Now, the other conversion, to change percents to fractions, what we're going to do there, once again, get rid of your percent sign, and then write the number over 100, because once again, percent's based on 100, right? And then make sure you write your answer, your fraction, in simplest form. That's where most students mess up, is they forget to go back and reduce their fraction. So make sure it's in simplest form. Alright, so let's look at some examples. So we want to write the percents below as a fraction and as a decimal. So start with 27%. Since they said fraction first, I'm going to change it to a fraction first. So the rule is you put 27 over 100, and then you're going to check and see if you can reduce that. Well, there's no common factor between 27 and 100, so that's it. Now with the decimal, we want to remember right now the decimal's at the back, so we're going to move it two places to the left, so you're going to get 0.27. So that's your decimal there. Now look at number 2, 120%. To change that to a fraction, we put 120 over 100, and now we want to reduce it. So one thing I can do is I can just cancel those zeros. That's right off the bat, like dividing by 10. So now I have 12 over 10 is what I need to see if I can reduce. Well, 2 is a common factor there. So if I divide the top and bottom by 2, on the top 12 divided by 2 is 6, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So there's my fraction. And then with the decimal part, remember this is a whole number, 120, so we're going to move it two places to the left, so you would get 1.2. And you can write the 0 behind the 2 if you want to, but you don't have to. Either way is fine. Alright, let's look at number 3, 35%. So to change it to a fraction, remember, drop the percent sign, put it over 100. Now, 35 and 100, they have a common factor of 5. So I'm going to divide by 5, the top and bottom. So that's going to give me 7, and 100 divided by 5 would be 20 in the denominator. So 7/20ths. And then again, 35%, go two places to the left to change it to a decimal. So we get 0.35. Now, 62%, well, we're going to go ahead and change that to a fraction. 62 over 100. They're both even, so you can always reduce by 2. So divide the top and bottom by 2, and that's what, 31 over 50, and that would be it. 31 is prime, and there's nothing else that will go into both of those numbers. And then to change 62% to a decimal, move it two places to the left, so you have 0.62. All right. Now, here we want to write these percents. Is that the next slide? That looked kind of weird. Yeah, okay, that's right. Write the percent as a decimal. So when you change a percent to a decimal, we're going to go 2 places to the left. Okay, so what's really weird here is you already start with a percent, but it has a decimal in it, and that kind of freaks people out. But you still start where the decimal is, and you're going to go 2 places to the left. So we go in front of the 0, and then we have to go one more place, which means we need to add a 0 there. So you're going to have 0.007. If you want to put the 0 in front, you can. That 5 is just the number for the problem, not part of the answer. So you have 0.007. It's a very small secret agent, right? It's like mini-me of James Bond. That was a joke. If you're not laughing, take a nap. Sorry. Okay, 4.3%. 2 places to the left. So we go whoop whoop, and you got to make that noise. Make sure you do that when you do that problem. Put a little 0 there. So we're going to have 0.043 as our decimal. Now, 500%, a lot of people get that one wrong because they just go, oh, 50. Okay, so don't guess. Remember the decimals at the end. So 2 places to the left is going to put it right after the 5. So it would just be 5. Okay. And 1.256%, we're going to take that decimal point and go whoop whoop, 2 places to the left. So I need to add on a 0 there. So I have 0.01256. So you have to write all the digits. You can't round it off or leave something off. You want to write all the digits when you're doing these problems. Okay, so now our next objective is now we're going to go the other way. We've changed percents to fractions and decimals, and now we're going to write decimals as percents and fractions as percents. So to change a decimal to a percent, we just moved it 2 places to the left to change it to a decimal. Well, now to change it to a percent, you're going to go back the other way, 2 places to the right. And then add zeros as needed, and make sure you write your percent symbol at the end of your number. Okay? Now, to write fractions as percents, what you're going to do, and this involves a little bit more work, you have to start, and these fractions are special because every single one of them the denominator will go into 100 evenly. They've given you only those special fractions. So you're going to rewrite the fraction as an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100, because what's percent based on? 100, right? So you write that fraction as a percent and then add your percent symbol. Okay? So let's look at some of these problems. The first ones, we want to write the decimal as a percent. So decimal to a percent, we have to go to the right 2 places. So we're going to go whoop whoop, which means we need to add on a 0 there because one was behind the 7, and then the next one we need to add on a 0. So we have 670%. Okay. Number 2, 0.025, we're going to go 2 places to the right. So you go 1, 2. It's going to be between the 2 and the 5. Now, do not write the zeros that are at the front because that just looks weird. Those drop off because the number now is 2.5. And then don't forget your percent sign. Number 3, we have 8. So a lot of people get mixed up. Where's the decimal point? It's behind the 8 because it's a whole number. So when you go whoop whoop for your 2 places, you've got to add on 2 zeros. So it would be 800%. All right? And number 4, to move the decimal point there, 2 places to the right, you go 1, 2, and you're going to have 135.8%. So make sure you actually move it. I have so many people, they do the little wavy thing underneath, and then they just bring the decimal point right down where it was. And it's like, what the heck are you doing? So make sure that you actually move the decimal point. Now, before we go on to the next set of problems, I want to show you a shortcut that can help you remember which way to go between decimals and percents, because a lot of people get mixed up of which way, left or right. Okay? So think about your alphabet, D and P. If it's in alphabetical order, D comes before P. So you write D and P. That's decimals and percents. Then you draw an arrow each way. It doesn't matter which one, like the top one could be going to the right and the bottom one to the left, as long as they're going opposite ways. That's what's important. And then put a little 2 in the middle. All right, so here's how you use this shortcut. Say on number 1, look at number 1. We started with a decimal and it said to write the decimal as a percent, which means on my shortcut I'm going to start over here at the D. Okay, I'm going to start at the decimal, and to get to a percent, which arrow? It's going to start here as the bottom arrow. I have to go 2 places to the right, which is what I just did. Now on the problems we did earlier, when we were starting with a percent, then you would say, oh, hey, here's P. If I'm starting with a percent and I need to get a decimal, that's telling me follow that arrow, that I have to go to the left. So it's a cool little shortcut thing. That's kind of messy. Now let me show you what it looks like without all those extra arrows. But it doesn't matter which way you draw the arrows, because it matters what you're starting with. If you're starting with a decimal, you would go with the top arrow because that's where the beginning of that arrow is. So you go to the right. If you're starting with a percent, you'd start with this bottom arrow and it tells you to go to the left. So it'll always work, and you can write that on, your scratch paper as soon as you get ready to take your test. If you don't like it, come up with your own little shortcut. All right, now here we want to write these fractions as percents. So remember what the directions said. It said to write the fraction as an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. And obviously the reason we're using 100 is because that's what percent is based on. So I'm going to set up 100 as my denominator here, and we have 12 over 25. So 25, you're figuring out 25 times what is 100. If you divide there, it's 4. Okay, so if I multiply the bottom by 4, I also have to multiply the top by 4. So that gives me 48 over 100. 12 times 4. Now 48 hundredths as a percent is just 48%. There you go. So whatever you get as your new numerator, that's your percent. Okay, the thing you have to remember here is to set it up over 100. That's the key. So look at number 6, 3/5. So I want to write it over 100. So 100 divided by 5 would give me 20. That's what I'm multiplying by. So 3 times 20 is going to be 60. So my percent there is 60%. And if you notice, look at all of the denominators on this slide. 25, 5, 20, 4. They all go into 100 evenly. They've picked those on purpose. So when you're doing these problems, they're not going to give you something like 16 or something as a denominator that doesn't go into 100 evenly. They're going to go into 100 evenly on purpose. So now let's look at 3/20. So we're going to set it up over 100. So 20 times what is 100? That would be times 5. So I multiply 3 times 5 on top, which would be 15. So we get 15%. And then down here, number 8, 1/4. Once again, set it up over 100. So it's going to be times 25. So 1 times 25 gives me 25. And that would be 25%. And those of you who go to sales, if you're like me, I go to any sale I can find, you know probably about percents like that. 1/4 off or 25% off, things like that. Okay? All right, so here's some you tries. So pause the video and try these on your own. All right, number 1, write the percent as a fraction and a decimal. So let's do the fraction first. So we're going to remember, drop the percent and put 45 over 100. And now I can reduce that by 5. So 45 divided by 5 is 9, and 100 divided by 5 is 20. So 9 over 20. And then as a decimal, remember your shortcut thing here. D, always before P. It's always 2 places. Okay, so I'm starting with a percent here. So I'm starting with the P. I'm going to use the top arrow. I have to go 2 places to the left. So it's going to be 0.45. Okay, 78%. I'm going to put 78 over 100. And now those are both even, so I know I can divide by 2. And what the heck is that? Let's see, 339, is that right? 6 with 1 left over. That looks right to me. And then 100 divided by 2 is 50. And that's it. You can't do any other reducing there. And then as a decimal, 78%, you go 2 places to the left, would be 0.78. All right. Number 3, 250%. Put 250 over 100, and I can cancel a 0. So now I'm looking at 25 over 10, and those have a common factor of 5, so I can divide by 5. And let's see, we get 5 over 2. Okay. Now 250% as a decimal, we're going to go 2 places to the left, so it's going to come up right between the 2 and the 5, so you get 2.5. And number 4, 63%, we're going to put 63 over 100, and the only thing that goes, you've got what, 3 and 21, nothing else, 7 and 9, none of those will go into 100, so that's reduced. And then 2 places to the left with your decimal point, so we have 0.63. Okay, on these we want to write the decimal as a percent. So remember, decimals and percents, okay, 2 places. All right, now we're starting with a decimal. So all of these start with the D, the arrow showing you go to the right. So we're going to go 2 places to the right on all of these. So when we take the decimal point on the first one, that's going to be 840%. Okay, because you go behind the 4 and then you need one more place. So you need to add on a 0. Now number 6, 0.0035, we're going to go 2 places to the right, and it's going to come up right in front of the 3. So it would be 0.35%. So it seems weird, but you can have decimals in your percent. That's a very small percentage, that's all. And then look at number 7, 2.06. So once again, 2 places to the right. So it's going to end up being 206%. And number 8, 0.16. Once again, 2 places to the right. So we get 16%. Okay, number 9. So this slide we want to write the fraction as a percent. So this is where we have to take these fractions and write them with a denominator of 100. So 13 over 25, 25 will go into 100 4 times. So I have to multiply the top by 4. And what the heck is that? Carry a 1. 52 over 100. Okay, which as a percent would be 52%. Okay. Number 10, 3/4. So change that to 100 as your new denominator. So that's 4 goes into 100 25 times. So 3 times 25 is 75. So we get 75%. Number 11, 7 over 20. So once again, write it over 100. So 20 times 5 gives you 100. And 7 times 5 is 35. So the percent there is 35%. And number 12, 4/5. So same thing, denominator of 100. 5 will go into 100 20 times. 4 times 20, multiply on top, gives you 80, which is 80%. All right, and that should be it for section 4.6.